I am 18 years old male, I'm a high school senior and proposal season is currently in full swing. I was in my AP Chem class when suddenly an entourage of people entered my classroom with a disabled girl. She has cerebral palsy, that I know. I first saw the posters and the bouquet of flowers she was holding and thought,
Aww.
that's sweet of her. Then they revealed the posters and I read my name and was completely taken aback. I literally almost had a anxiety attack. I didn't know what to say at all and the entire class was cheering and people even started filming. I was straight up frozen for a minute and I could feel myself burning up with embarrassment. Of course I wanted to say no, but since it was so public and everyone was waiting for me to say yes, I did and hugged her. Everyone clapped including the teacher and I was mortified. One of my buddies asked me if I was okay. Afterwards, since apparently I looked like I was gonna burst into tears and I told him I literally did not expect that at all, and I didn't want to say yes. He suggested that I go find her after school or something and explain that to her and I agreed. Now, this girl is really nice. We had a class together last year and sat next to each other for a majority of it and talked quite a lot. I would say we were friends then, but we haven't spoken more than 2 times this school year, so we've definitely drifted apart. That's why I was completely shocked when she sprung the prom asking on me. Usually, people have their friends make sure that the other is at least aware before doing the asking to prevent situations like this. I was contemplating if I should just bite the bullet and go with her, but decided I just couldn't because it is my senior year prom and I was already starting to plan my asking. There's this girl that I've liked for a couple of months now and I recently heard from my friends that she likes me back, so I was gonna ask her. So I ended up going to the special ed classroom after school where I found her and asked if I could speak to her outside. I told her everything and how I really appreciated the gesture. But I was already planning on asking my crush to prom and she was crushed. She started crying really loudly and asked me why I couldn't have just said no, and I said that I didn't want to embarrass the two of us in front of all those people. At this point, one of her aides came out to check on us since she could hear the crying, and the girl told her aide what happened and she straight up glared at me and said, "That's not okay." Now I feel like absolute shit. My sister Amanda never met her bio mom. My dad raised her alone until she was barely 1. My dad and my mom got married in 1992. Amanda knew that my mom wasn't her bio mother. She started pressuring my dad for information on her mom when she was around 17. My dad always gave her vague answers and refused to talk about her bio mom, which put a strain on their relationship. Enters our uncle and revealed the family secret. Apparently, Amy's mom wanted an abortion. She was 19. But my dad and his parents were able to bribe her. They offered her money if she followed up with the pregnancy. And she accepted. My grandparents sold one of their houses and gave her half of that money to Amy's mom when the pregnancy was viable. And the other half she received when she waived her parental rights over Amy to let my mom adopt her when she was 4. My uncle wasn't supposed to tell her that. My grandparents were furious. Amy stopped her crusade to meet her bio mom and her relationship with my dad went back to normal. Amy never mentioned her bio mom again. Dad got her into therapy after that. A month ago, Amy found out that she was pregnant. The pregnancy was an accident. She switched birth controls. The problem being, Amy is about to start her surgical residency and her hours are insane. It is basically impossible to raise a baby while working in that rhythm, so she wanted an abortion. The problem is that Mark, her fiancé, 6 years together, wanted her to keep the baby. It caused a big fight. In a move to convince Amy to keep the baby, Mark told Dad about this. Until that point, no one in our family knew about this. Dad talked with her, and they got into an enormous fight. Amy got the abortion 10 days ago. Mark ended up breaking up with her. She is obviously really sad. My dad was acting like a jerk. He was pretending that Amy didn't exist. He didn't want to talk or see her. So on Christmas Day, we were exchanging gifts. When everyone had already finished giving each other gifts, Dad got up and gave Amy her present. He gave her an envelope in front of everyone and told her to open it. It was 3 pictures with something written on the back, a name, an address, and a phone number. Dad told her that he was tired of babying her, that this is a photo of her bio mom and her 2 sons. That was her bio mom address, and that he contacted her bio mom and she is willing to speak with Amy. He gave her Amy's number. Dad thinks that they will have a great relationship since they are so similar. Amy broke down crying. I ended up in a fight with Dad, called him a monster for doing that to her. He just said he was just tired and left. We ended up leaving and she spent the rest of Christmas crying on my shoulder. She is a mess since that. My younger brothers called me a Grinch for making a scene and ruining Christmas. My mom was silent during the whole thing. My parents have been giving me the cold shoulder since Christmas. University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue. To which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. My name is Mary, and I'm expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby's a boy then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. DR appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, then turned his phone off to hide from his family, then finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated, but they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had severe fights with them after they refused to stop it. And my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived I saw blue balloons, blue cake with father-in-law's name / decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were still hoping the gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusionals and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl not a boy as they expected and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else.